Welcome back. We are having our first conversation this morning, and as we mentioned, it's all about the first ever Nursing Oncology Conference. We are joined this morning by three representatives to talk to us about this event set to take place. Here with us this morning is Ms. Delone Pascasio, and she is the CEO of the Belize Cancer Center. Well, familiar face, but I have to say this is the first time I am meeting her in person. So very nice to have you here with us this morning, Ms. Pascasio.
Very nice to be here.
But also joining us is Mavis Nunez, and she is a hospice nurse. And with them this morning as well is Dr. Nicholas Lino, and he is the keynote speaker for this conference as well. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. And welcome.
Thank you.
I always look forward to having conversations around oncology and the work that is being done here in Belize, because whenever we are recognizing any particular cancer awareness, I know breast cancer here in Belize is one of the most popular, but there are very much many other types of cancers that persons in Belize still fight. But having an oncology conference, to me, promises a bit more support that is needed. Is this something that we can expect from a conference of this nature, Ms. Pascasio?
Most definitely. We recognize that we are having an increased number of cancer patients tumbling into our healthcare system. We also recognize that we have an insufficient amount of nurses who feel comfortable and confident to take care of these patients. The families and the patients depend on the staff, the clinical staff, to make sure that when they get into difficulty because of their cancer diagnosis, that there will be at least someone out there that could handle some of the complex issues that they bring to the healthcare system. Most patients don't come to the hospital because they want to play. They come because they've lost their compensatory mechanism and they need someone to help them to get through this episode of illness. Yeah. The intent of the conference is to build that level of skill so that in the future, not only are we going to concentrate our efforts in preventing cancer, but we are hopefully going to be able to better support the patient and the family through the cancer treatment journey and hopefully increase our survivorship.
So how will a conference like this accomplish that?
Essentially by sharing information, by looking at best practice, by engaging nurses across the country in dialogue, by exchanging information with some of our international experts, and hopefully by taking away from here and embedding into their daily practice those things that we talk about during these next 2 days.
So, Ms. Moody, let's talk a bit about your involvement in the conference and where your role falls into play.
Surely. So I'm a hospice nurse in New York, and the goal for hospice care is compassionate care, to treat the patient with respect and dignity, and to provide care in terms of symptom management, primarily pain management. Because at the end of the day, pain is what the patient says pain is. So we cannot say, oh, well, I just gave you medication. We have to constantly medicate the patient until we see that they're very comfortable.
What is hospice care for those who may not be familiar?
So hospice care is actually end-of-life care, and that is for patients who have a poor prognosis. And the doctors would say, well, probably you have 6 months to live.
6 minutes?
6 months.
Okay, yes, all right.
Well, I always say leave it in God's hands.
Yeah.
But then that's the category that they go by. And hospice is by choice. So the patients and their families, they are the ones that sign into hospice if they so desire.
And what's some of the greater challenges that comes with this field of work?
Yes, well, emotionally, it can be very emotionally straining for one to work in a hospice unit. But at the end of the day, you want to see that the patient is very comfortable and die in peace and dignity. So being there and looking at the patient as your own family member, and you want to see them as comfortable as possible, ensuring that you provide the best care for them with compassion and being non-judgmental in terms of when they say, I have pain, they might just say, I have pain 5 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago. Your role then is to ensure to be a patient advocate and ensure that you inform the doctor that, you know, maybe we need to increase the patient's medication, or we need to change the medication or add something else. So that's one of the positive side of it, but it can be very emotionally draining for one to be working in a hospice unit.
I can absolutely imagine that. But I think one of the things that I'd be curious about is to know, do we have many hospice nurses here in Belize in particular?
No, most of this care is done by the family in home. And often they're very unprepared for this process of death. I know that there's a palliative care organization here in Belize City, and it has provided education to certain individuals in the districts. But it really needs to be anchored so that it provides, because cancer patients are everywhere. Yeah, and they're not restricted to one geographic area. So the ability to get that service out to them wherever they are is still in its transition, right?
Yes.
But as Ms. Modi said, the main issue is symptom management, and to get the patient to accept the journey, the last part of the journey that he or she is on. And to the extent that the nurses can do that and alleviate some of the fear and make the patient comfortable, that is primarily the goal of the hospice program.
How do you get patients to accept the journey that they are on? And do you find that the majority of patients may at time be resistant, if I would, to the idea that this is the reality I'm facing?
Well, yeah, that can be a challenge, but as I've mentioned before, based on the prognosis of the patient, when the patient visits her doctor for probably her oncology doctor, they recommend hospice care depending on the outcome, the prognosis of the patient. So if the patient, say, is at the end of life and chemotherapy, nothing is working for that patient, the doctor would recommend and refer the patient to hospice care. So it's their choice. So they're the ones that sign what we call an election of benefit, election of hospice benefit.
So they would have already made a decision, and that's perhaps the first step. I'm entering this care, so you know what?
Yes,
I've accepted
like
a part of the
acceptance.
reality.
Yes.
All right, so we'll bring Dr. Lino into the conversation. You're the keynote speaker. What will be your main message?
Well, I think I need to highlight the nature of cancer itself.
Yeah.
It's, cancer doesn't discriminate. And, as Ms. Moody said about the palliative care and hospice, well, not everyone goes through that. I know someone who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, just went to the hospital and was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in the early 30s. So some of the things I'm going to highlight is, lifestyle changes. For example, we have what we call, multifactorial risk factors for cancer. For example, if someone has a relative that had lung cancer, they shouldn't smoke. Or if they had, stomach cancer or some of that, proper dieting, exercise, all these other things. Also, in terms of treating people with cancer, cancer is not just one disease by itself. There are a lot of comorbidities, and it's a huge burden to the patient and their family members. So someone might have cancer, and then the next thing you know, they might have diabetes and hypertension and some of these other things, and the emotional factors that are involved with cancer as well. You know, someone gets diagnosed with cancer, the first thing they think about is, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a huge thing. We have this thing called, you know, the stages of grieving. I'm going to talk about that. So, you know, from someone who does a lot of, you know, education for nurses, I'll talk about a lot of pathophysiological perspectives, evidence-based practice as well, because in Belize, you know, we really don't have the resources to treat people with cancer, but there are other things that we can do. There's this huge thing about tropical medicine, you know, like soursop leaves and all
Yes.
these other
Like
things.
traditional.
Yeah,
Herbs.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So we can sort of kind of supplement that, or maybe couple that with whatever oncology treatment the patient's getting. And research has shown, you know, there's a lot of evidence that if the person accepts what they're going through, because the emotions, you know, it helps your mental status plays a huge role in the function of the immune system. But if the person can take their herbs, or maybe, you know, whatever it is that they choose, they're going to be more compliant with whatever it is that the doctor orders for them to, you know, try to, you know, sort of kind of fight or beat this cancer. It's not really, people say you fight cancer, you don't really fight it, you know, it's something that you learn to live with, you accept. You know, my mom died a couple months ago from cancer. She was in her 80s, like 88. But it's the same process.
Yeah.
You know, the only difference is that as you get older, you know, the body becomes debilitated a little faster because, you know, your physical makeup changes. However, cancer is cancer, and some people don't accept it, some do, but the emotional aspect is huge. You know, we talk about, you know, family members, and we have to think about people who don't have family.
Yeah, absolutely. And condolences on the loss of your mother. Dr. Lino, one of the things that I think viewers would be appreciative to know is, one, that you are Belizean and you are a nurse doctor. So I think what I wanted to underscore was your interest in being a part of this conference, which is the first of its kind in the first place here in Belize. Of course, you have knowledge of the works of oncology, but why did you feel the need to contribute to Belize in this way?
Well, you know, thanks to Ms. Pascasio. I come to Belize a lot. I'm from Dangriga. You know, love my country, of course. And I've always tried to have some active role in the, you know, medical. And also, I've offered to guest teach be a guest lecturer at the UB. Hopefully they'll take me up at it, you know, at some point. But I have a sister who, she decided to retire at age 50, so she lives down in Dangriga. And she suggested that I talk to Ms. Pascasio. Well, they know each other. And so the rest is history. She invited me to the conference, and I came, you know, I mean, I couldn't turn it down. Actually, when she told me about it, I told my mom about it. And, you know, she said, oh, I'm proud of you. But I wish I could go back and talk to my mom now. But of course, you know, unfortunately, she's not around anymore. But, you know, I carry her with me. And this is something that, you know, is very close to me. And so I want to be able to impart some useful, you know, information. And hopefully that here in Belize, people don't continue to languish from cancer.
Yeah. One of the conversations that we had yesterday was on mental health, and one of the points that they brought up was the stigma of mental health, and they compared it to what was the stigma of cancer back in the day, where people were almost ashamed to say that they had cancer. It's almost like you kind of whisper it, I have the C word, you know? Yes. Do we still observe that as something that takes place here in Belize? Are there still fair in sharing that someone might be diagnosed with cancer? Or is it a bit more liberating to associate the fight with it?
I wish I could tell you that that is no longer an issue, but it is. More so in certain populations than in others. And that contributes significantly to the late diagnosis of cancer, and therefore the late treatment and the reduction in survival rate. And they're right. It's many individuals will say, well, I don't want anybody to know. But because it has an economic impact on them, it has a social impact on them, and and they have to face the reality that this is a journey that is going to interrupt their current lifestyle. So many individuals don't necessarily want to share that. It's if they're outside the country, then it's easier for them to share it with the provider outside the country. But when they're inside, they're much more guarded about that diagnosis, only because they see the consequence or the perceived consequence of what that means to disclose that diagnosis.
What's your greatest concern for Belize where cancer is concerned?
I'm concerned that we will not have sufficient resources in the future to handle the pace at which we are seeing the rate of cancer increase, both on the physician side and the nursing side. I'm concerned that we don't have the breadth or the bandwidth of healthcare to manage these cancer experiences for patients. Patients continue to be financially burdened because the care of cancer after it's been diagnosed is very expensive. And to the extent that the healthcare can begin to look at changing its infrastructure to support those individuals who are currently unable to afford this care and make this care affordable in the country, that would probably be the best vision for cancer care in Belize.
Yes. So let's talk a bit just as we wrap this conversation up about the conference, date, place, time, so that our viewers can get an understanding of when how they can access it.
Okay, the conference begins today.
Excellent.
Okay, opening ceremonies begin at 8:30 this morning. The clinical sessions begin after 10 o'clock, after we have a morning break. It's a 2-day conference, and we have a number of sessions essentially aimed at sharing information and engaging our audience in dialogue. We will have some very specific sessions on procedures, and then for instance, we're going to be talking about complications to chemotherapy. We're going to be talking about the effects of radiation, and then we have some more what I call conceptual discussions, about advocacy, about the rights of patients, about the decisions, how nurses help patients to make decisions about where on their journey they should intervene. Okay, and the responsibility of nurses. This is really about, it was built for nurses, by nurses.
I get it.
And the reason for that is because nurses spend more time with patients, and patients are apt to ask nurses more questions about things that are perplexing to them.
Yes.
Right?
Excellent.
And so the nurses, I imagine nurses will be in attendance. Is this something that they're going to be coming from the general hospital, the private hospitals as well?
We've invited them all.
Okay, wonderful.
And it's free of cost.
No, there's a cost. There's a cost. The conference is 2 days. It's $50 a day.
Okay.
And if they attend for the 2 days, then it's $75.
Nice.
Right?
Wonderful.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up this segment, I'll give you guys a final opportunity to share some last words with our viewers. We can begin with you, Ms. Moody.
Sure. So in terms of hospice care, it's very important that nurses become aware of hospice care, compassionate care, pain and other symptom management is important for the patient, and training of nurses for hospice care is also very important. So that's what I want to.
I just want to thank our sponsors. The Ministry of Health, Sagicor, the Belize, the Nursing and Midwife Council, the Belize Cancer Center, Bradley's, and Brody's Pharmaceutical. They've been really great in supporting us. But I also want to thank our conference planning team for making sure that this day happens today.
Wonderful. Dr. Lino?
Well, I just want to just highlight the importance of healthy lifestyle, proper diet, exercise, and all the other good things that are beneficial for longevity and good health. I want to thank Ms. Pascaso for the invitation. It's great to be here at this capacity, and I'm looking forward to a great conference, and hopefully, make this more sort of at least an annual event.
Yes, wonderful. We'd love to have you here more often,
Thank you.
Especially contributing in this capacity.
Nice.
Wonderful. Well, we wish you guys all the best, and we look forward to having you guys back here again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's been great.
All right, we are going to take another quick break, and when we come back, the conversation switches into Taiwan's Expo. Stay with us. We'll be right back.